Hello. I'm slightly nervous. I haven't done a YouTube Live ever. I've done Facebook Live, but I'm taking a break from Facebook. I wonder if any of you are taking a break from Facebook too. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to check in today, I haven't done a regular podcast in quite a while, and something really interesting, a very interesting synchronicity happened about a week ago that some of you might be interested in too. I was listening to another podcaster. It's Michael Shermer's Science Salon. And he was interviewing, and I'm going to go look it up right now, who that is, Leonard Mlodinow. And he was a very close associate of Stephen Hawking. And he was describing in like the 5 to 7 minute mark of this podcast, it's Science Salon number 132. He was describing how Stephen's epiphany about the Big Bang came about from visiting a lecture. He was attending a lecture. I can't remember by whom, but I think it was at Cambridge. And the other scientist was describing black holes and black hole theory. And what he was saying about the black holes was that the way that the black hole, I think it was originates or something like that, is it's almost like it collapses in on itself from a single point. And the way he described it going from big to small, it completely reminded me, this just absolutely blew my mind. The way he described it is exactly how my team and I describe our recommendation for how to exit, if you will, time space and exit this realm post-death. And I was like, oh my God. I think he just described the way that black holes operate as the same way that I describe in my work, are recommendations for how to, again, exit space-time once we are dead, rather than going into the afterlife realms and all the nonsense and confusion and pressure to reincarnate and things like that happen there. So, I mean, in a way, of course, it made sense, but I'm still kind of tripping about that similarity. Hello, Dolores. Anyway, so that was pretty crazy. And I just realized that some of you that are really only experience our work on the free podcast may not even know some of the discoveries and I want to see new theories that we're introducing in our work related to the afterlife and what happens in the afterlife realms. The fact that you not only do you not need to reincarnate, no one ever needed to reincarnate or incarnate to begin with. So if you really feel into that really contradicts a lot of the metaphysical theory and new age sort of theories that are offered right now in this reality. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay that it contradicts. It has offered a lot of liberation for a lot of people in terms of the way that they operate and behave and act in this world. It's very freeing. I can hear my daughter, Georgia, coming downstairs. Georgia, I'm doing a YouTube Live. Are you coming down? She's like, no, not now. I probably won't be longer than like 10 minutes or so. Anyway, so that whole new idea, a lot of people have been resonating with it. And we've also been talking more about this realm as a simulation theory or in alignment with the simulation hypothesis, which is another sort of discovery I had as I was listening to, who was it? Can't remember if it was Elon Musk or somebody else on a Joe Rogan podcast talking about simulation theory. And I was like, oh my God, that totally fits with how I am shown and how I perceive this reality. That was a much closer match than anything else that I'd heard in this reality. And it was very much how I intuit this reality is much more like that simulation theory and simulation hypothesis. So anyway, a lot's been going on in our work, and really creating new structures and frameworks to describe who and what we are, and really what this reality is and what we're doing here. I really encourage all of you to seriously question some of the beliefs and the truths that you have. You may find yourself disagreeing with yourself at times, and that could be another sort of liberation, really, of you from potentially outdated beliefs into updated beliefs that better hold you and the creation of you that you are in the midst of in your life. The creation identity is such an important part of a sense of wholeness and completeness and free will, and the opportunity to really feel free and liberated to live your life and to be you in the different ways that maybe you dream about or that you hope for. Okay? All righty. Let's take a nice deep breath, please. In through the nose and out through the nose. Okay. All right. So for some of you, I'm wondering if some of you have heard about the idea of a simulation theory and simulation hypothesis. I'd be curious if you're on live as well to kind of type that in or make a mention of that. It's always interesting to me to see who, where we are intersecting with different ideas and belief systems. And I do find that there's a lot of individuals that I've connected with over the years that we think we're saying the same things, but in actuality, we're saying and thinking very different things. But sometimes especially if we like another person, it's like we want to agree with each other maybe so badly that we'll almost pretend that we agree with things that we actually don't agree with. And I'm a person that's comfortable with disagreement. I'm actually even comfortable with confrontation, especially if it's done respectfully, giving each person the respect that I think all humans deserve, in terms of we each get to decide what we believe and are the things, especially the things that can't be proven. That's a whole other really gray area. The things that can't be proven. Just because something can't be proven doesn't mean it's not true. But it takes another level of, I think, discernment and rationality and really creator energy to carefully explore what we believe and why. Yeah. Hey, Christian. Saying, yes, we're definitely in simulation. See, I can't prove that we're in a simulation. So I wouldn't say yes. For me, I wouldn't say, yes, we're definitely in simulation, because we can't prove it. To me, there is no definite. So I think for me, I'm more comfortable with saying it makes sense to me that this is a simulation. It's a simulated reality. Which doesn't mean to me that it's a hologram or a holographic situation. We're better than that. As creator energy, we can do much better than a hologram or a holograph. And this idea that, the first time that I ever intuited that space-time is created, that just... it makes me giggle even just thinking about it. It's like, God, that's so badass. The idea that there is a creator of origin that could conceive of something that we now not only call space-time, we operate within it, is just so mind-boggling. And when I hear physicists or engineers or any scientist talk about simulation theory, and I heard Joe Rogan, I think, ask Elon Musk this, it went something like, so who's behind the simulation? And that's where I've heard the conversations sort of shut down because they, from what I understand from the podcasts I've listened to, which isn't that many, but they kind of don't. It's almost like most individuals that I respect and admire that believe in simulation theory or simulation hypothesis. I'm fine with either term. They can't. Their heads don't yet go into the level of the level that is beyond the simulation and that is beyond space time, right? Whew, that's a whole different level of creator of origin, of that what is behind the simulation is something so creative and so I want to say capable of creating realms like space and time vectors. That alone to me is just it's a really cool thing. And I recognize that there's a lot of individuals in the metaphysical space or the sci-fi sort of space that they easily latch onto theories that those of us that are within the simulation are somehow like victims of something, or the slave race sort of hypothesis. And I didn't come into my giftedness through those avenues of thought or beliefs or theories. So when I heard them, I have maybe a healthy detachment from them in terms of like, no, humans aren't a slave race. Humans were designed. All life in this reality was designed as, how do I want to put it? It's sort of like, what would our source energy, what would our creative origin feel like in that thing? And for source energy to experience itself, to make a human for it to be, gives source energy, also known as creative origin in my vernacular, when you create a human to be, it gives you an opportunity to not only interact within the simulation, but to affect the simulation and to maybe adjust the simulation. So you're both an experiencer and a receiver of what is here, as well as some degree of influencer within this. But the only thing you have control over is your one. Yourself, the human that you made to be. So it's pretty amazing. if you agree with that, and if you really let yourself ponder it, to me, it's absolutely fascinating. So regarding the afterlife, then, the afterlife, by the way that most people describe it, they still describe it within the vectors of time space, and to me, that's a sign of a flaw in the understanding, because if you really are wanting to consider the consciousness that was in the human bodysuit as wanting perhaps after death to free itself, let's say, not just from the bodysuit that it was in post-death, but possibly also wanting to free itself from space-time, then it would not want to hang out in an afterlife realm that is still within space-time. It would want to bypass the afterlife realm and completely, I want to say escape, but I don't want to, I would rather not perpetuate the idea that we feel trapped. So the escape, if you will, or the liberation from time space has to happen similar to the way that Stephen Hawking and whomever's lecture he was listening to. You have to go within yourself to a point of singularity, such that the way that we've described it is, it's almost like you pop outside of space-time. Yeah. Okay, so how do you do that? I've described it in many of the courses and in the premium content that we do through my website, but I do want to give a little sort of summary here for anyone. Once you It's like instructions after death. And I'm not pro-suicide at all. And I've done many videos recently, more than more than I ever really intended to, um, trying to encourage those that are depressed or suicidal, especially amidst all the everything that's going on with COVID and lockdowns. And it's a hard time for a lot of people. Anyway, so I'm not pro suicide. I'm very much in the celebration of that life is something that is a gift, and blessed in a lot of ways, even though it can be horrid here in many ways. So what would we do after we die? Our instructions for post-death, the first acknowledgement is that you realize that your bodysuit is not working anymore. And there's a version of you that is conscious and aware that your bodysuit, so it's almost like a sense of looking back on your human bodysuit, acknowledging that does not work anymore. But there is a sense of self that is beyond the bodysuit. So the sense of self that can acknowledge that the bodysuit is no longer functioning and that it can't get back in the bodysuit has some choices that it needs to make. And there will be various assistants that can, let's say, materialize, not in a physical matter, but in a metaphysical sensation. They can interact and shapeshift and present themselves as whatever you'll allow them to be. It's confusing in the afterlife. To me, it's not unlike it's confusing very much in this reality. So in that afterlife sensation, once one acknowledges that their bodysuit is not working anymore, and for the atheists, they may be very surprised that they still have a sense of self, yet it's no longer centered and based within the framework of the bodysuit. That would be a nice surprise, or maybe unpleasant surprise to a lot of individuals. So the body stopped working. There's that acknowledgement. And then our recommendation is that it's almost like imagining that they're closing their eyes, even though they don't have eyes anymore, right? But there's a sense of self that will feel sort of like they felt within the bodysuit. So a sense of literally going within, which in our humanness would feel like closing our eyes and imagining yourself from the inside, sensing itself. And then in order to access a frequency range that is suitable for liberation from time-space, a sense of peace and calm and even a sense of wholeness and joy is very beneficial. So one way that we do that within the human bodysuit is a smile on the face, even though, again, you don't have a face at that point. So I know this sounds strange. It's so fun to get to talk to other people that maybe get this. Okay, so there is a sense of closing your eyes, imagining a smile, imagining a face, and imagine going within, deeper and deeper within self. And it may be very helpful to have some sort of memory or awareness of a time that you were very, very happy, or a time that you felt very focused and very present. And for some of us in our humanness, there's a sensation of like, there's nowhere I'd rather be than here. Time may seem to stop. You may sense that you've lost your edge of your humanness and you feel almost transcendent in an omnipresent sort of way, that there's nothing you're not, a blissful connection perhaps. So as you're going within yourself in this awareness, that you're connecting deeper and deeper within a sense of self, and you may start to visualize that there literally is almost like an inner sun, an inner, like a pinpoint, a point of singularity that may appear like a white light, or it may appear like another sort of dimensional gateway of some sort. And as you sort of smile energetically your way to that point, that you stay within that transcendent space and you allow yourself the feeling of connection deep within self. There may be outer noise and distractions, just like there would be trying to meditate in this reality. So again, it's very beneficial to go deep, deep within yourself. And what it will feel like when you've literally transcended space-time, it will feel almost like a pop, like you are a bubble that has popped. And then there's the sense of almost like catching your breath as you come up from water, and you're like, and there's just this completely different sense of awareness. And there can be an automatic sense of, oh my God, I did it, and elation, because it's very unusual. It's much more common that those that die, their consciousness gets all wrapped up in this afterlife, other layers of the realm, staying within the simulation, staying within time space. And there can be a whole host of things that happen in the afterlife that tend to lead to another incarnation that was never necessary. Sadly, it's so confused and distorted in the afterlife. Again, not very different than how things are very confused and distorted in the life. So there's a huge preoccupation with reincarnation. And that to me is a big problem really that I have with a lot of spiritual beliefs and ascension teachings and things like that, or anything that sort of glorifies in a way reincarnation, that is how we evolve, that is how we grow, that's how we learn, and that's the objective, is to maximize your present incarnation, to further your soulfulness. And that whole premise, that whole structure and framework is just completely flawed, in my view. And again, if it's working for others, I don't want to waggle my finger at anybody, but to me, it's just like, oh, that's not how I see it at all. I see a lot of problems with that. And the first thing they're going to do in the afterlife is just jump right back in. They're going to reincarnate again unnecessarily. So I'm not anti-incarnation. I am very pro-choice in this way, in terms of I feel like everybody, every body and every consciousness should have the information they deserve to make informed consent, in a way, an informed choice about their incarnation and about the fact that they don't have to reincarnate at all. So, alrighty. How are you guys doing? Anybody have a question? Hi, Nicole. She's saying, I've heard of simulation theory. I'm undecided. Yeah, there's a lot of different sort of frameworks that we can all use in terms of our explanation of who we are as a life form, and what this is, and what we're in, and why we're here, and all of those things. Nice. Christian is saying it's also wild to find out that we recreate our bodies every minute. Yeah, I mean, or do we? I guess there can be a sense of we can recreate our sense of self and recreate our identity, but yeah, from a cell proliferation and cell development, that sort of thing. But I don't know. I guess I'm not disagreeing with you, but on another very real sense, there is a sense that it's new but not new. There's still a framework holding a sense of self in place that helps everybody stay within some sort of lane about who and what they are. And they're certainly not recreating themselves from a 6'2" man to a 5'2" woman, in any amount of cell cell development and cell replacement. So, hi, CJ, saying, hi, Jill. Do you think our bodies are holding more high frequency light right now? Probably not in the way that you're looking at it. It's not that I don't wish it were true. It's that I just don't see that. I've seen much more evidence of a devolution, a digression, of humanity in general, especially over the last 6 months. Nothing like a pandemic for humanity to show its true colors, right? And what it is under intense circumstances. If it gets, how mean will it get? How hateful and divisive and all those things. So I see more signs of a devolution, a digression, than an evolution, and an expansion. So No, I don't think our bodies are necessarily holding more high frequency light right now. I That's not to say it's not possible, and it's not to say that some of us are continuously, I want to say, refining and purifying. Maybe not. Maybe I don't like the word purifying, but constantly refining and um, more consciously creating and accessing and being a version of ourselves that we are more, that we feel more authority over, an increased sense of agency, and hopefully closer and closer to something such as self-actualization. But when I think about the idea of our bodies holding more high frequency light right now, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what that may mean, that it's something that's handed out globally, that it's like a everybody on a new rung of a ladder sort of thing. And I definitely don't see it that way. I feel like humans individually, one by one, are much more the director of a rung on a ladder sort of assessment of progress or degress in that regard. Yeah, sorry if that's bad news. That's just my take. You can disagree with me if you want to. Yeah, Karen, what may help the confusion in the afterlife, if anything? In my way of looking at it and sort of sensing it, we've tried so many things. We, as our creator of origin that is beyond the simulation, there's a lot that goes on within the simulation that we just sort of shake our heads at. Just like, oh, damn. You know what I mean? Shoot. Now they're experiencing this, and now they've got that, and oh my God, and they don't even know it. And so I feel like a lot of us are as source energy are constantly trying new things to, from our own sense as source energy, improve the simulation, make it more fair, make it more honest. Again, knowing that all we can do is create a new one for ourselves to be and operate from the inside within the simulation to perhaps adjust it, tweak it, etc. So, I mean, the way that I look at it right now, I'm trying to do it from this side. I sense that there are ways that I am also me as my source energy in the afterlife, trying to assist and guide. But from the way that I'm shown that, because that's all happening at the same time, of course, it's even harder to try to offer new information and new insights in the afterlife vectors of the simulation. It's just so confusing. Religions don't do a great job of preparing their sort of parishioners for what happens once the body stops working. There's a lot of flawed expectations that can be, it makes me just want to cry almost just thinking about it. It can be used against those consciousnesses. And it's kind of reminds me of somebody, you know, the cliche kind of story of like a young girl heading off from Oklahoma to Hollywood to become a star. You know what I mean? And, you know, getting off the little bus with her little pink suitcase or whatever, hoping to become a Hollywood star, you know. And she gets off the bus and there's, you know, it's a bus stop. So there's a different energy there anyway. And there's a sense of, I mean, she can be manipulated, she can be misled, and she's starry-eyed, and she has maybe some naive expectations about what Hollywood will be like. She's probably wrong and probably giving Hollywood too much credit, maybe. And that there's just a lot of opportunity and sadly intention of misleading her. And that's sort of how I that's sort of how I perceive the afterlife. But again, we just thought of an example within the simulation of the humans being alive too. So to me, it's no worse in the afterlife, but it's not better than the human physical realm that we're experiencing here as well. So we've tried that. It's highly confusing and shape-shifting, and telling somebody exactly what they want to hear is even easier in some ways in the afterlife. So I'm trying it again. I'm trying it from here, saying it another way, offering it another way, because I just want everybody to know their choices. That's my biggest goal, is that not only within this life, but also in the afterlife, that we better understand and appreciate who and what we each are individually, and what this reality is, and what it's for, and what it never promised. But we have a lot of sort of starry-eyed expectations about what this reality is supposed to be, and about what it's supposed to be moving towards. And I just don't see it that way at all. So I take this reality very seriously. I take the simulation incredibly seriously, especially when I look at the effects and how it evolves through unconscious creation into something that it was never meant to be, but it's still offering source energy some sense of expansive experience, even if it's something that, as source energy, we're regularly shaking our head at. Just like, oh, damn it. Better go back in there. Better make another us. But I look at all life as at its essence, it is source energy, but in the simulation, within the simulation, it's sort of built for forgetting that we are source energy. So most of the forces at work are about forgetting. It's about lack, I don't want to say unconscious, like dead, but like a zombie sort of experience of haze and confusion and fog. It's just really bizarre. This whole thing is just so bizarre. And yet here we are. I mean, you're here, I'm here. The fact that there even is a here is kind of a trip. Yeah. So oftentimes at this point of the conversation, there's some people that are like, I want out. How do I get out? It is hard to get out. It's hard to shut down a body. And the way that I'm shown it, those that are sort of prone to suicide, the first thing they realize when their body has stopped working and they've succeeded at suicide is intense regret. Intense regret, because they're them, right? They're the sense and the container of their source energy in that one that they created on some level of themselves is now no more. And the same compromised state that led them to suicide is likely to lead them into reincarnating again. So for those that are, I want to say, the most vulnerable in this reality, they are also as similarly comparatively vulnerable in the afterlife. And I just have a huge problem with all of that. So where was I going? I'm not trying to be all, down and dismal and that kind of thing, but it is a depressing topic easily. But some people say, well, then why doesn't source just shut the whole thing off? And the reason that I sense, again, I can't prove any of this, none of us can in this when it comes to topics like this. But the way that I access it is that for all of us that do in some way liberate ourselves from the simulation and pop outside of space-time post-death, that it's almost like there's like a poll done of, should we shut it down or should we keep it going? And there is that sense of, oh my God, no, don't shut it down. That was crazy. That was amazing. There's no other place like that. Don't you? No, no, no. We can't shut it down. It's such a trip. It's such a ride. It's thrilling and exhilarating and crazy what we created with that simulation. Um, that's the vast majority of the sensations that we have as source energy once we bypass and get out. But it's kind of, is it a biased poll though? Because it's by those that have liberated themselves out. It's a very fair point. Yeah. Trippy, for sure. Okay, how are you guys doing over here? CJ is saying, what is it with higher, and they have in quotations, what is it with quote unquote higher intelligence manipulating lower intel seems prevalent? That's a fun question, CJ. I like the way you work. It's not so much about intelligence; it's about access of creator energy. Intelligence in its strictest terms is about mental acuity, right? And demonstration of mental capabilities, right? But in terms of manipulation, that isn't IQ based. It is use of creation energy based, which may not necessarily be IQ or mental capacity related. Manipulation is something very different in terms of, I mean, I guess there can be individuals that manipulate for positive reasons, but I don't tend to look at it that way, because those that would want to control or manipulate another person for, even if it's supposedly for good, it still is manipulation, and it still is not respecting and interacting with another life form as its own thing, as it's with its own agency, and treating it as a whole and complete, also sovereign, also relevant, inherently valuable, separate thing from the other. So those that manipulate others have a skewed sense of self relative to others, and they're definitely giving themselves more value and more sense of importance than the other. And for like narcissists, it's almost like they sense others to be just another pawn in their life, to be manipulated and controlled. And I mean, I don't like that. Do you like that? I really hate that, actually. And I guess my approach is that I sense that I can't undo narcissism in this reality, but I can help inform those that are somehow falling prey regularly to narcissists, and helping them sort of shake themselves awake from the spell that a narcissist or a manipulator of any type tends to sort of cast on those that they're intending to manipulate. And I mean, narcissists and other forms of manipulators, they tend to use a high amount of charm. I mean, there's just so many ways that life forms can be controlled and manipulated, and that part, I'm not cool with that either. And it's fascinating in a horrifying sort of way how easily individuals can be manipulated. And I even look at that myself as my Jill over I'm 50 now, and I think of times where I like wanted to believe what somebody was saying so much that I was like, yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, that's not even true. What am I, shaking myself up from? It is like a spell of consciousness. That, I mean, the other person doesn't even have to necessarily be trained in it. Some people are natural manipulators. That's so freaky, right? So for any of us that have been on the receiving end of feeling manipulated, it's like, "Oh my god." And then outside of the manipulated experience, you sort of look at it like, "Oh my god, how did I fall for that? How did I not see, like, who and what they were?" It's you feel silly and stupid sometimes and just like, "Oh god." Um, yeah, I don't trust people that want to want to manipulate other people. I like, ooh, like, they just literally creep me out. Um, and wanting to limit their information and present only a certain side of themselves and constantly, mess with the other person's mind in a way in terms of making them think they're crazy. If you think of even like abusers and victims and things like that, it's just amazing. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Rasheen. Hello, sister. Okay, hello, Nicole again. She's saying, so source energy is addicted to the earth soap opera, LOL. Oh, that's a funny way to look at it. Actually, I don't think it's addicted. I mean, I appreciate the humor though. It addicted to the soap opera. There's a lot here that's not a soap opera though. There's actually a whole group of life in this reality that's not part of the soap opera at all. It's not watching it, it's not playing in it, it's completely energetically removed from the drama rama that is so common here. But the drama rama has its highs. I mean, it's just like, oh my god, it's crazy, literally crazy. So, and then addicted, I guess, and you probably just meant this facetiously, but I'm still taking it pretty literally because I want to. Addiction happens. I mean, if you really look at the patterns of addiction and the energy patterns that are involved in addiction, it's a sense of I have to have it, and source energy doesn't have to have it. But in that liberation from time space experience, there is a sense of do you have a say? Do you want that realm to continue? Do you want the simulation to keep running because you do have a say? And again, the vast majority of consciousness that is at that point of being asked says an exit poll is, I guess, the way you could look at it, says yes. And even those that say no, it's based on the fact of what they've just been through. And then over time, and of course it's beyond time, there's a sense of, you know what, keep it running. Let's just maybe try to do a better job of making it fair. And I feel like I fit very much in that sort of ilk. I'm concerned about it. I'm not entirely convinced of the benefits of it as on most days. But in the whole of it, source energy doesn't need it. But I mean, source energy is so curious, you guys. And I feel like that's another part that's really confusing and misunderstood, is that a lot of spiritual teachings have portrayed source energy, or creator of origin, as I like to call it. They've portrayed it as this sense of like this fat, happy Buddha, sort of all knowing. Yes, yes, wise ones. You know what I mean? Yes, little children. God on a cloud, sort of condescending sort of energy that it knows all there is to know. And that is so not how I know / sense how source energy operates. And it's not a who, it's a what. And it's always curious. And that's where Einstein in particular was incredibly accurate in terms of that in his way, the universe is always expanding. Well, not only is the universe always expanding, which is of course time space, but beyond time space, the layers of creative origin that are beyond time space and created time space is always curious, always in a benevolent way, by the way. So it's sort of like, what would that be like? What would this be like? What are we in this situation? What are we in that situation? What kind of situations, i.e., simulations, can we conjure up to see what we are in that? Right? And that's this simulation that you and I are in, as I'm shown it, not shown like clairvoyant, but shown in a claircognizant way, is what would we do if we didn't know we were source? What are we when we don't know what we are? So we created this thing called space and time, and we created realms where we do just that. So in a way, any of us involved in a conversation like you and I are right now, we're sort of hackers anyway, because we something about us is not under the full spell of forgetting that we're source energy. And we're having an incredibly conscious conversation right now. Very enlightened, in terms of like, wait, they're talking about the simulation, like they know what the simulation is, right? Yeah, that's a great kind of hack. But it doesn't mean we're not in the simulation, and it doesn't mean we're manipulating others, and it doesn't mean we're masters of energy where we can just hold out our hands and say, I'd like an apple please, and boing, it's right there. So we're still I want to say at the mercy of the way the simulation is structured and designed, at least within the timeline that we're presently in. And of course we chose that too. We chose the timeline that you and I are incarnated into. So yeah, fascinating. Hello, Ellen. She's saying, wow, I just popped in for that last part, and it does seem kind of sadistic when you look at it from the perspective of the liberated ones keeping it going while the imprisoned souls suffer. Oh, I know that's a very fair assessment. But we as creator of origin, and I know me as my Jill, I don't look at us as imprisoned souls at all. And I feel like that's actually maybe the best way forward, in a way, towards actual progress is for us to acknowledge that we're not imprisoned souls, and that every single one of us at some point, as our creator of origin, made a self for it to be. So Ellen, your source energy said, I'd like to be an Ellen. Let's make an Ellen for us to be. That to me is a completely upgraded, empowered way for you to be Ellen, to know that source energy is thrilled to have an Ellen to be in this reality, and that your Ellen is far less limited than you maybe had otherwise thought, and far less limited compared to the idea that all the souls are here suffering and that all the souls here are imprisoned. Okay, so our thoughts and the belief system very much create frameworks within which your you operates. So I love to offer different frameworks, different belief systems, in a way, different structures within which to identify who and what we are, who and what others are, and what this reality is, and what it's for, and what it's capable of, and what we're capable of individually as well. I hope that's making a difference. I'm trying. There's a ton of content that we're creating regularly, but I'm not sharing the podcasts as much anymore. It was just my own choice last year to not do weekly podcasts anymore. So, but I'm having fun with this so far, and hopefully you guys are maybe getting some new ideas. Hello, Michael. He's saying, with respect to suicide, there is one other scenario. For example, those faced with guaranteed death scenario, they choose between death out of their control versus their choosing of death. I hear you, Michael. And it's so good to cross paths with you again, brother. I agree with you. And I'm definitely not pro-suicide in the way that suicide is traditionally meant, but in terms of euthanasia, I respect for having a sense of your own destiny and the way that you die. We have a lot of room for improvement there, don't we? I mean, the pain and suffering involved in some facets of terminal illness and all of those things. Yeah, thank you. That's kind of interesting and synchronistic that I had just heard. I think it was on a Joe Rogan podcast recently about Lewy body syndrome. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm definitely not an expert in that, but that's what Robin Williams was a suffering. That was his affliction when he decided to end his own life. By the way, did you guys know that his coroner report, and I just watched the new documentary this weekend, that I think his coroner's report showed that he had no, maybe it was that Anthony Bourdain. I've been preoccupied with this kind of stuff a little bit in my spare time. That there were, maybe it was Anthony, I think it was an Anthony Bourdain, that there was no, in his toxicology report of his body after death, there was no sign of any drugs or alcohol in his system. So Anthony was a different situation, but Robin Williams just deciding that his, and I think it is the Lewy body syndrome or disease is a form of Parkinson's, but he was literally losing his sense of self. So his choice to end his own life then became something very different in terms of the way it was presented to the public, and that, he'd been depressed before and suicide, and it just really put a smear in a lot of ways, in my way of looking at it anyway, in terms of who and what he was, and just the very unique original light of source that Robin Williams was, and really allowed himself to be, created himself to be in this world. It's just, there's no, I just felt, I felt him, if you will say, there's no easy way of getting out of there. Out of the bodysuit and out of one's life. It's a very tricky situation. Hello, Nicole again. She's saying, yes, I was being facetious, but I appreciate your seriousness. I agree that source is always seeking expansion through experience. Yeah. And related to that, for somebody else, they may want to put it under the bucket of, so, because I've heard this before, people say, well, we're here for source to get to know itself. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, well, that's not accurate, because source isn't having an identity crisis, although that human might be. So humans can have an identity crisis, but source isn't trying to find out what it is. It's just curious about what other ways it can be. As source. Hello, Ellen. She said, oh, totally agree. From my level of consciousness, I'm more referring to all of those souls who haven't been able to see outside of the construct of 3D reality. I love your presence here, Jill. Oh, thank you, Ellen. And thank you for clarifying that. There's a lot of ways in words where, especially if I don't have a context of, and if I, again, Ellen, I know your name is familiar too. I think we met before too. Nice to see you again too, sister. Anyway, I don't know how literally to take it, and I don't want to presume I know all the angles that one is insinuating. So anyway, yeah, I think that's another part of my passion in terms of hoping to raise awareness about and help people make better choices in the afterlife so that they don't reincarnate again unnecessarily. It's awesome to incarnate. I'm glad I incarnated. I'm so glad I have a Jill to be in this reality, but I wouldn't really want to be anyone else. I like the way I designed myself, and I have, excuse me, tremendous compassion and grace and respect for other life forms. And I like that I have my me to work with. I feel like I designed it really, really specifically for my interests, my passions, my, And I love the idea of all life on earth having that sense of ownership and authorship, even authority, agency, self-actualization, all those things regarding that there's no one else they'd rather be, and that they're so glad that they made a them, right, to be. But, and I don't want to get too obtuse here because this part gets a little bit tricky, but there are a lot of beings that are here incarnated within the simulation that did not incarnate, as it wasn't done with the consciousness of their source energy and their creator of origin. It was done from a more, I want to say, compromised, limited choice set that happens in the afterlife, which is within the simulation. And that's a very, very different experience. Very different set of choices, a limited set of choices, and totally different awareness. about what is likely in store when they land in Hollywood and get off that bus. So it's a completely different ride. And I feel in many ways like there is a compromised state to it that's unfair. So I would rather that everyone post death from their present incarnation, that they have a higher chance of self-liberation beyond the simulation, which also means beyond time and space. So that then if they decide to incarnate, it can be from the full set of choices, which is at any point in time and at any, with almost endless choices of who their parents are and what time of what we had already talked about, time of birth, location of birth. All those things are a full, boundless set of choices, and they have much more authorship over the kind of, I want to say, key structural elements that will be part of their entire journey. Because there's so much that we can't plan for within the simulation, that taking as much authorship and taking very seriously the choices that can be made, again, that form a fundamental structure for the entire ride. Yeah. So there was something else I was gonna tee up right there. What was that? Let me go get it again. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we're wrapping up. Hang on. I do want to find out what that was. Hang on. Nope, I'm not getting it. I don't know what it was. Anyway, we'll say goodbye now, I think. My 15-year-old was going to come down earlier when she got done with her online classes, and she's stuck upstairs because she didn't want to come behind the camera. So I should move and say adios. Anyway, I think that's it for now. I love you guys. It's been great to be here. It's been fun to be alongside you, and I hope that you enjoyed it. We are sharing regularly in more of a premium setting. That was my choice to do it that way. But I started thinking yesterday, I really do want to sort of pop into either an Instagram. Is there Instagram Live? Anyway, Instagram Live or in Twitter. I don't see as many of us on Twitter in our kind of vibe. Anyway, so I was like, I'll just do YouTube. I've been on YouTube the longest. And in terms of my subscriber base, it's definitely the highest on YouTube. So here I am. Anyway, so great to see you guys. Oh, thanks, Nicole. She's saying, thanks, Jill. Nice to see you again. I love you guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know if I'll even put it on my website. I'll probably just leave it here. I don't edit anyway, so I'm not at a disadvantage there, but thank you. It was great to connect with you again. I hope you guys are doing okay. It's such strange times, and it's really I consider it an honor. Oh, that was a little that was funny how I messed up the words there. I really consider it an honor. It's an honor to be alongside you within the simulation and shoulder to shoulder. And I hope that you're doing okay. And it's a weird time. I encourage everyone to be nice, play nice. It's just a really weird time right now. So anyway, I hope that in this experience, you may have felt more like yourself, your actual self, possibly more liberated within your life. I think that's a wonderful opportunity that we can have here to feel as liberated as we actually are, that we always have full leadership over who and what we are. And that may not feel like enough, and I completely understand that, but it's more than we think it is. And when you realize that you can really only be held responsible for yourself, that's a lot of responsibility. It's more than enough to work with. It's more than enough it's enough that it got you here. How about that? Okay. All right. I guess bye-bye for now. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.